I'll be your slave, human. Just feed my baby, please, the alien girl pleaded. Kale stared. The words hung in the recycled air of the crashed dreadnought, more alien than the female who spoke them. She was on her knees in the dust and grime, head bowed, a warrior's posture of supplication. It was all wrong. Her body was a road map of toned muscle under tight black synth leather, and her sharp angular face was a masterpiece of defiant beauty, even streaked with filth. In her arms a small bundle whimpered, a sound that cut through Kale's jaded core like a plasma torch. He kept his rifle trained on her. Bounty hunters didn't survive by trusting kneeling goddesses in shipwrecks. "Get up," he rasped, his voice rough from the metallic dust of the scrapyard moon. She didn't move. I said, "Get the fuck up." Her head lifted. Obsidian eyes, deep and starless, locked onto his. There was no fear in them, only a chilling transactional fury. "My larval son requires sustenance. You have it. State your price. My body, my service, my life. It is the law of the claim." Kyle almost laughed. Law. There was no law here but gravity and greed. He'd been tracking a band of Cathar scavengers, but found this instead. A lone female of a species he didn't recognize, cornered in the derelict engine room. "I don't want a slave," he said, lowering his rifle an inch. "Slaves are messy." "What are you?" Her lips peeled back from teeth that were just a little too sharp. "I am Zyla, and I am a prize for a male strong enough to take me." He could feel the capital letters in her voice, the sheer, arrogant certainty. He looked from her proud, desperate face to the squirming bundle. The kid was pale, its tiny breaths shallow. Shit. He had a heart, buried under layers of scar tissue and cynicism, but it was there. He unclipped a nutrient pack from his belt and tossed it. It landed in the dust before her. "Feed the kid," he grunted. "Then we talk about who the prize is here." Zyla snatched the pack, her movements a blur of deadly grace. She tore it open with her teeth and squeezed a few drops of the gray paste onto her finger, gently rubbing it on the infant's lips. The baby, her son, began to suckle weakly. Kyle watched, his hand never straying far from the grip of his pistol. He led her from the echoing ruin of the engine room to his makeshift camp, a pressurized tent pitched in the shadow of a shattered ion cannon. The twin suns of the system beat down on the metal planes, cooking the world. Inside, the air was cool, filtered, safe. She settled in a corner, cradling her son, her eyes tracking Kale's every move, a predator in a cage. "So," he started, cleaning his rifle with an oily rag. "Zyla, what are you running from that's worse than me?" She looked up, her expression unreadable. "You provided sustenance. You offered shelter. You have claimed us. My past is now your burden." Kyle stopped rubbing. He looked at her, truly looked at her. The arrogance wasn't a mask, it was her core programming. "Whoa, back the fuck up, lady," he said, a sarcastic grin spreading across his face. "I gave you a protein pack, not a damned marriage proposal. We're not claimed. We have a temporary arrangement." She tilted her head, a flicker of confusion in those black eyes. "Marriage proposal? Is that the human ritual of binding? A public declaration of ownership?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "No, it's complicated. Look, I'm not your owner. I'm just a guy who doesn't want to watch a baby starve. That's it. End of story." Zyla's eyes narrowed. "You lie. No male acts without purpose, without the desire for dominance. You test my resolve. A dangerous game, human." The way she said human made it sound like an insult, a species of pathetic, soft-shelled insects. He could feel a headache forming. This was so much more complicated than Cathar scavengers. He was stuck with a warrior queen who thought he was playing some kind of galactic 4D chess for the right to own her. All he'd wanted was the bounty on a few stolen power cores. A low moan echoed from outside, the sound of stressed metal groaning in the wind. Kyle glanced at the tent's reinforced flap. Storm's coming. The magnetic winds of this junkyard world could strip chrome from a hull in minutes. The air inside the small tent suddenly felt heavy, charged. It was too small for two people and an infant, especially when one of those people was a coiled spring of alien hostility. The storm hit with a shriek, hammering the tent with sand and metal shards. The lights flickered. The baby started to cry, a high, piercing wail that vibrated through Kyle's teeth. Zyla rocked the infant, whispering to it in a series of low, guttural clicks and coos, but the wailing only intensified. "What's wrong with it?" Kyle snapped over the noise. "He is unsettled by the storm's heart," she said, her voice tight with strain. "He feels the chaotic resonance." Kale grunted, crawling over. "Give him here," she hissed, pulling the baby protectively to her chest. "You will not touch him." "Jesus Christ, I'm trying to help," Kale shot back, his patience shredded. "Your scary mumbling isn't working. Let me try." He saw her hesitate, saw the war in her eyes between warrior pride and maternal desperation. Finally, with a reluctant growl, she held the infant out. Kale took the small, warm bundle. He was surprisingly light. He held the baby against his chest and started humming. A low, tuneless rumble he didn't even realize he knew. A ghost of a memory. The crying softened, slowly turning to whimpers, then quiet breaths. Zyla stared, her jaw slack. As Kyle adjusted the infant in his arms, his fingers brushed against Zyla's collarbone. He felt it then. A scar, not a wound from battle, but a perfect, symmetrical brand etched into her skin. He'd seen one before, on a collector's black market data slate. A bond mark scar, the sign of an exiled enforcer. Holy shit. He wasn't sheltering a random refugee. He was harboring royalty's disgraced, deadly shadow. The tent was an oven of shared breath and unspoken tension. The storm howled, a physical presence trying to tear their sanctuary apart. Kyle had given the baby back, but the moment had changed something. The space between them was now a live wire. He could smell her. A scent like ozone and crushed spice, something primal that bypassed his brain and went straight to his gut. She watched him, her obsidian eyes glinting in the dim emergency light. The subservience was gone, replaced by a predatory curiosity. "You are not a simple scavenger," she said, her voice a low purr. It vibrated through the small space. "Your hands know weapons, but they know how to soothe a child." A contradiction. Kyle finished cleaning his pistol, snapping the power cell back into place with a definitive click. "I'm full of surprises." A true claimant would not need to hide his strength, she pushed, her tone a clear challenge. He would display his dominance. He would take what he has earned. He looked up, meeting her gaze. A dangerous, thrilling current passed between them. He was starting to understand her language. It wasn't about sex, not really. It was about power. A ritual. "Is that what you want?" he asked, his voice dropping low. "You want me to... what? Flex? Beat my chest like some dumb ape?" Her lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. "Apes are respected warriors on my homeworld. They do not hesitate." Fuck. She was infuriating. And hot. The combination was lethal. "In my shelter we don't do claims," he said, his voice hard. "We do deals. And you still haven't told me who's hunting you." That was part of the deal. The smile vanished. Her jaw tightened. "They are unworthy of a name. They are betrayers who follow a corrupt law." Just then, a new sound cut through the storm. A high-pitched whine that Kyle knew all too well. The engine of a long-range hunter-killer skiff. Their scanners would be sweeping the wreckage, immune to the storm. "Shit," he breathed, killing the tense light. "Company's here." The skiff's searchlight cut a brilliant white swath across the metallic desert, slicing through the raging sandstorm. Kyle grabbed his rifle and a go bag. "Move! Now!" He didn't wait for an answer, just ripped open the back of the tent and plunged into the maelstrom. Zyla was right behind him, her son strapped tightly to her chest, moving with a silent, fluid grace that defied the gale force winds. He led them deeper into the carcass of the dreadnought, through corridors tilted at insane angles, and rooms littered with the ghosts of a forgotten war. The skiff was patient, its engines a constant menacing thrum overhead. They were being herded. "This way," Kyle grunted, forcing open a heavy blast door into a cramped, dark space that smelled of ozone and coolant. The ship's secondary engine room. He sealed the door behind them, plunging them into absolute darkness. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the distant heartbeat of the enemy engines. He felt her move closer, the heat of her body a tangible presence. "They are mercenaries," she whispered, her voice tight. "Hired by the elders. They will not stop." He could feel the fine tremor in her body. the vibration of a warrior anticipating a fight. His respect for her notched up again. She wasn't just a princess in exile. She was a fighter. He was starting to feel a grim sort of kinship with her. They were both running, both hunted. "Then we don't let them find us," he whispered back. He felt her hand on his arm. Her grip was like steel. "They will scan for my life signs, my son's. Then we'll have to mask them," he said, his mind racing. He fumbled in his pack, his fingers closing around 2 thermal regulators. "Strip." Her hand tightened for a second, then released. "A strange demand in a time of crisis, human. The regulators will dampen our heat signatures, but they work best on direct skin contact. Now get your clothes off, unless you'd rather explain your claimant bullshit to them." He heard the rustle of her synth leather suit in the pitch black. The sound was intimate, charged. He stripped off his own shirt, his skin prickling in the cool, dead air. He turned on the first regulator. A low hum filled the space, and he pressed the cold metal plate against his own chest. He fumbled for her, his hand brushing her bare arm, her shoulder, then the smooth, taut skin of her back. She was tense, a wire pulled taut. He pressed the second regulator against the small of her back. She flinched, a sharp intake of breath. "Stay still," he ordered, his voice a low growl. The proximity was intoxicating, her scent, the heat of her skin, the soft sounds of her breathing. It was too much. The fear of discovery, the adrenaline of the hunt, it all twisted together into a raw, desperate need. She turned in his arms, her body flush against his. It wasn't a seduction. It was a confrontation. "You tremble, human," she murmured, her lips impossibly close to his ear. "Is it fear or desire?" "Shut up," he breathed. But she didn't. She pushed against him, a clear challenge, a test of dominance. He shoved back, his hands finding her waist, gripping her hard. It was supposed to be a warning, a reassertion of control. But the moment his skin touched hers, a fuse lit. The argument, the fear, the power struggle, it all collapsed into a single explosive point. He crushed his mouth to hers. It wasn't a kiss. It was a collision, a battle. Her teeth scraped his lip and he growled, biting back. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling, demanding. This wasn't about tenderness. It was about the storm outside and the storm within. It was about 2 cornered animals clawing for purchase in a world of scrap and death. He lifted her, slamming her against the cold metal wall, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, meeting his ferocity with her own. It was a fight, a fuck, a brutal claiming in the dark. From Zyla's point of view, the universe narrowed to the dark engine room. The human, Kyle, was a force of nature, a storm to match the one raging outside. His scent, sweat, oil, and a unique male musk was overwhelming. His hands were rough, possessive. His mouth was a brand. In her culture, the vor, mating, was a conflict, a test. A male proved his worth not with pretty words or soft gestures, but with strength. He had to be strong enough to provide, strong enough to defend, strong enough to take. Kale had done all 3. He had provided sustenance when her son was fading. He had given them shelter from the killer storm. And now, in the dark, he was meeting her challenge, his power crashing against hers. He wasn't breaking her. He was matching her. It was the most profound form of respect a vor warrior could be shown. The pain of her back hitting the wall, the bruising grip of his hands, his raw, unvarnished hunger. It was a litany, a ritual. He was completing the rite he had started the moment he'd tossed her that nutrient pack. He was finalizing his claim. As the pleasure and pain crested, a white-hot wave that erased thought, instinct took over. The binding was not complete without a mark. A symbol of possession and protection, visible to all. As the climax seized them both, a violent, shuddering release that left them gasping in the dark, she twisted, her teeth finding the soft flesh of his neck. She bit down, not hard enough to cripple, but deep enough to draw blood, deep enough to leave a permanent ritual scar. His body went rigid beneath hers. The act was done. The bond was sealed. He was hers, and she and her son were his. A perfect, savage symmetry. They slid to the floor, a tangle of slick limbs and ragged breaths. The silence that followed was heavier than the darkness. Then, his voice, a raw, confused whisper. "What the fuck did you do to me?" She touched her fingers to his neck, feeling the welt her teeth had made. She felt no shame, no regret, only a profound, unshakable certainty. "I sealed your claim, Kyle," she said, her voice clear and calm. "We are bound." His fury was a palpable thing in the dark. "The hell we are," he snarled, scrambling away from her. "You bit me. What kind of psycho bites someone?" A loud clang from the blast door cut him off. A blue laser sliced through the metal, outlining the seams. The mercs. There was no more time for outrage. "Get dressed," Cale snapped, his voice all business again, the anger banked by a more immediate threat. They threw on their clothes in a shared, frantic silence. The bite on his neck throbbed in time with his pulse. Bound. The word echoed in his head. A promise and a threat. The door blew inward with a deafening crash, framing two hulking figures in powered armor, their helmets glowing with red optical sensors. Cale fired before the smoke cleared. His plasma bolt caught the first merc in the chest, sending him staggering back. Zyla moved like a shadow, a wicked-looking shard of metal in her hand, a piece of shrapnel she'd palmed earlier. She ducked under the second merc's clumsy swing and drove the blade deep into the armor's flexible neck joint. The giant gurgled and fell. But there were more. Two more pushed into the corridor behind them. Cale shoved Zyla towards a maintenance ladder. "Go! Up!" She didn't argue. She scrambled up the rungs and he laid down covering fire. Something was different. He knew where she would move before she did. When a stray shot came from an angle she couldn't see, he was already moving to block it, his body reacting on pure instinct. It was like a wire had been strung between them, humming with information. She reached a gantry above and, instead of fleeing, ripped a heavy conduit pipe from its moorings and hurled it down, crushing one of the remaining mercs. They were a team, a brutally efficient, synchronized unit. He was still pissed as hell about the neck-biting incident, but goddamn it worked. They fought their way out of the dreadnought's guts and back onto the stormy plains, moving as one. They left a trail of smoking armor and dead mercenaries in their wake. They found the merc's skiff half buried in a dune, its engines still humming. It was a better prize than any power core. Inside they found a well-stocked medkit. They were both bleeding, bruised, and high on adrenaline. Kyle slumped into the pilot's seat, while Zyla tended to a deep gash on his arm. The silence was thick with unspoken things. "You could have gotten killed back there," he said finally. His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual sarcasm. "You and the kid. We were claimed," she stated simply, as if it were the most obvious fact in the universe. She finished tying the bandage. A bound mate does not abandon his charge. He winced as she tightened the knot. He looked at her, at the fierce, unyielding loyalty in her eyes. "That offer you made," he said. "I'll be your slave." Was that just a line? Something you thought a dumb human would want to hear? She paused, her gaze dropping for the first time, a crack in the armor. "It was a desperate plea," she admitted, her voice low. "A translation of my position into terms I believed a lesser being, a scavenger, would understand. I was wrong. You are not a lesser being." He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Then he asked the real question. "Why are they hunting you, Zyla?" The truth. She met his eyes, and the full weight of her story came out. She was Zyla Thavor, first enforcer to the Empress. Betrayed. Exiled because she refused an order to execute a rival's child. Her own son was the product of a forbidden union, a symbol of her defiance. She wasn't just running. She was a one-woman rebellion. Kyle listened, the throbbing in his neck a constant reminder of how entangled he was. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "I get it," he said softly. "Running from your own people." He looked away, out at the swirling sands. "I was Spec Ops, Alliance Marine Corps. A mission went sideways. I was the only one who made it out. They called me a hero, but I knew the truth. I made a bad call. Got my whole team killed." It was a confession he'd never made to anyone, a wound he'd been hiding under a mountain of cynicism. In the quiet of the cockpit, surrounded by their enemy's gear, they were just two survivors, stripped bare. The storm began to break, the twin suns casting long, distorted shadows across the plains of wreckage. The skiff was theirs, a full tank of fuel, advanced weaponry, a navigation system that could take them anywhere in the outer rim, a future. "So, what now, Your Highness?" Kale asked. The sarcasm was gone from his tone, replaced by a grudging, hard-won respect. He touched the bite mark on his neck. It didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like an anchor. Zyla turned from the viewport, a slow, genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time. It transformed her face, softening the warrior's edges into something breathtaking. "Now, claimant," she replied, her voice a low, possessive purr that sent a shiver down his spine. "We find a world that has learned to fear us both." She stepped closer, her presence filling the cockpit. She didn't touch him, but he felt the connection between them, that strange, invisible wire, humming with intent. The baby, her son, stirred in his sleep pouch. Without thinking, Kale reached out. "Here, let me take him." Zyla watched, her obsidian eyes searching his face as he carefully unstrapped the infant and cradled him against his chest. The baby settled instantly, snuggling into the warmth of Kale's body. It felt right, natural. He looked from the sleeping child in his arms to the warrior queen before him, a jaded bounty hunter, a disgraced enforcer, and a baby born of rebellion. They were a pack, a clan, a family forged in violence and desperation. He wasn't a slave and she wasn't a prize. They were something far more dangerous. They were partners. He met her gaze over the baby's head and nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. He powered up the skiff's engines, the craft lifting smoothly from the sand. They had a full galaxy to run from, or to conquer, together.